everybody, it's Jo Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your gun dog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your gun dog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It, Fetched It. This week, I'm going to be talking to LWDG Expert Sarah Drake all about how we can love our dogs but not like our dogs. How are you today, Sarah?
I'm great, thank you, Jo. Happy to be here and talking to you about this very controversial topic. How are you?
Very well. And when you said to me this about you wanted to talk about this, I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about that. We haven't talked about that. And that is this like idea of why some dog owners, most dog owners, we love our dogs to death, don't we? But we don't necessarily like them. So let's talk a little bit about what factors contribute to making it feel like.
Yeah, so there's so many factors that can come into play with how much we like our dogs. It's like anything that we do or we don't like in life. There can be external factors that are going to impact our relationship with our dogs. So, like we were saying this morning, Jo, how awful the past 6 months have been in terms of the weather. We've had such a wet winter throughout the UK. So every single time you go outside with your dog, everyone's getting soaking wet through from the rain. Or if it's not raining, you get covered in mud because the ground's so wet. So factors like that can cause resentment with our dogs, with the whole process of just owning a dog and the responsibilities that come along with that. But there's also other factors. Maybe there's financial factors, emotional factors, those pressures that we put on ourselves from a cultural perspective, a societal perspective. So all of those things have actually nothing to do with our dog as an individual, but can impact the relationship that we're having with our dogs through our own mindset and how we are viewing the dog and dog ownership as a whole.
I suppose it's a little bit like other halves, isn't it? Obviously, we love them, or hopefully we love them. But sometimes they can do things and you think, why have you done that now? And it can really grate on you, and it can literally be where you're like, if they do this one more time, I am going to poke them in the eye. It's almost a feeling inside. We're like, you've done this not on purpose, but this behavior really gets to me.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to not take it personally, isn't it? Really challenging. Like you said, it's the same thing that we have in all of our relationships. So with people, with our pets, but our dogs do just seem to know how to rub us the wrong way. And it's because I think that we care so much. We do love our dogs. And as our dog owners and the society we live in the UK particularly, we have so much that revolves around our dogs and we love them. And I think if you're participating, particularly in dog sports such as gun dog training, that shows a level of extra care and commitment that you're willing to participate in more training, putting more time into your dogs, more investment into your dogs. And so when we feel that we're committing so much as people and as owners, that when it feels like our dogs are sticking two fingers up at us and going, nah, I'm not going to do that, that it can be really hard to not take it personally.
I can remember my mum saying to me, Jo, I love you, but right now I don't like you. And as a kid, I was like, what do you mean? Aren't they the same thing? But as I've grown, she was trying to tell me it wasn't about me as a person, but it's about the behavior, isn't it?
Yeah, behaviours and situations, I think. Oftentimes it can be very frustrating when we think our dogs know something, they should know something, they should be able to do something that we're asking them to do. And for whatever reason, they don't do it, or they don't do it quite as well as we know that they could be doing it.
So when you see a client or you talk to another member and they are like, this is like a really infuriating me. Where do you think, what tend to be the behavioral challenges that cause us to feel this way? I think it's normally where we feel like they've learned something, but they're just ignoring the crap out of us.
Yeah, I think oftentimes that probably is the case. Sometimes it can be frustrating when we're trying to teach a dog a new behavior from scratch, and for whatever the reason, the dog's just not getting it. We think that we've gone right to the basic level of behavior, and we're trying to do it in the most simple way to teach them this new behavior, but they're just, for whatever reason, it's just not clicking. That can be really frustrating for us as handlers, and that situation forces us to adapt and think of new ways of doing things. But I think that doesn't necessarily breed that same dislike of our dogs, because we can empathize, we can understand with just not understanding something. We've all been there where you're trying to learn something and you just don't get it. So that can be frustrating as a handler, but I don't think that causes this dislike, this active dislike of our dogs, in the same way as that perceived misbehaving on our dog's part.
I think you're right. I think like when you know they understand something, if they've been doing something for months perfectly, and then suddenly they start to be a bit cheeky with it, but then they decide that the cheeky way is now their new way. It can get a little bit tiresome when you're like, actually, I know different. And then I think you're right. That's the one where people are like, oh, this is personal, because you do almost think that the dog is doing it on purpose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's really important with this kind of feeling is that our dogs are never doing anything to spite us. They don't have that capability within them. They're not doing it to go, "Anna, up yours." It might feel that way, but that isn't the case. They just do not have the capacity for that thought process, even though it can really feel like it. We all know that there's so many different factors at play when we're training our dogs. We talk about the 3Ds a lot, so duration, distance, and distractions play a massive part in our dog's behavior. And oftentimes, if we drill down into what is actually happening and look at the situation from an outside perspective, take ourselves out of the handler in that situation and look at it as a bystander, we can quite often see, actually, maybe I'm asking too much of my dog, maybe I'm boring my dog, and they're just saying, actually, I'm not interested in doing this because I've done it so many times before. That there's could be so many different elements, different factors that are at play, that when we take that step back, that we can see, actually, we're not creating that environment for our dog to behave in a way that we might want them to behave.
Yeah, because this can be a key indicator in some situations of overtraining, can't it? Like you just said, the dog's done it so many times over its lifespan. It's just like, literally, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, definitely. It's finding that balance with anything that you're doing with your dog, in that being predictable in some ways can be really beneficial. You repeat exercises and you repeat processes with your dog over and over again to aid the learning. That's how we know we form habits. We embed that learning and that behavior in our dog. So we know that we don't just call our dogs once and that they've learned a recall forever. We know we have to repeat it and repeat it to embed it and make it a habit and make it a positive behavior. However, doing something too much can become very boring. And especially when we've got working breeds that are quite intelligent, that like things to do, that like doing different things, that like being challenged, that if they feel that maybe an exercise is a bit boring, maybe it's a bit beneath them, if you've got a sassy working cocker like mine, that she will totally switch off if she feels this is beneath me. Actually, you could be challenging me more. And so sometimes going through those basic behaviors can be quite challenging when you've got a dog that's demanding to do more.
And this comes, I think, quite nicely to what you just touched upon there, which is predictability, isn't it? It's a little bit like if every day you went to school, they made you say the two times table and hold your table like just routinely in order, you get so bored of that. But then you walk into a teacher who just randomly chooses little bits of them, asks you them out of order, out of sequence, and you have to stop for a second and think. And I think our dogs like that. They like having to stop and think.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. We know that with our working breeds, we've designed them, we've selectively bred them for thousands of years to work alongside us, but to also to be clever and to be independent thinkers and make their own decisions. And so that can be really beneficial to us in some ways when we're working our dogs, but some ways can be challenging. So finding that balance between teaching something and being predictable to aid that learning, but then moving away from being totally predictable to mixing it up, to being variable, to keep your dog's interest and keep your dog's focus is really important part of training our dogs.
Another thing we can discuss here as well is attention seeking, isn't it? Because they are clever dogs, they are intelligent dogs, and they like to get our attention. And sometimes they will see it as being a divid is going to give me attention, so I'll go down that route.
Yeah, 100%. I love the censored word there. That's great. Yeah, absolutely, that can be the case. And I think that's one of the things when we're talking about disliking our dogs that can be a real factor at play when we just want space from our dogs. We want them to leave us alone, actually, because most of our dogs do live in the house with us. Okay, some are in kennels, but they're usually on site. We have a lot of interaction with our dogs daily, letting them out, feeding them, walking them, training them. If they do live in the house, if they're on the sofa with you, cuddling you, all these kinds of things. It's a lot of interaction and it can be quite full on. And sometimes us as owners just want a bit of space. And if you've got a dog that's very attention seeking, climbing on top of you, jumping up at you, demanding that you play with them, all these kinds of things, it can be quite overwhelming and quite annoying. And we just think, I just want some space from you, and you're not giving me that. And that can be hard to deal with. And we as owners then have to facilitate that space. I think we have to take the responsibility to make sure that we are giving the dogs the ability to give us that space and they are not being able to just attention seek and demand things from us all the time.
I was watching Gogglebox. I don't know how I've got into that. I was watching Gogglebox with Meg the other day, and it was showing part of a clip. I don't know what the series is. It's on Netflix, I think, where it's based on a true story, like this psychopathic solicitor who stalks people as soon as they're nice to her. I don't know what it's called. And anyway, she says in this bit where I wish there's like a zip from your chin all the way down in your stomach. So I could like zip you open and climb inside. And I just looked at her and I was like, you're like that dog. She so wants to be so like near enough inside me. And I'm like, sometimes it's just easier to lay on the floor like Rex by my feet, be close to me, be chilled. But yeah, what you're just saying there, like it made me laugh. I was thinking, there is those dogs that are like, even if they're like close to your face, they want to get closer, don't they?
Yeah, that's so funny. I'm gonna have to take that Netflix recommendation from you. I think that's hilarious. Yeah, but that's so true. And we always talk about Velcro dogs, don't we? How often spaniels, but all breeds can be Velcro dogs. They are literally glued to you all the time. And I think if you're having a positive relationship with your dog and you're in a good space with them, that can be really nice. We have dogs as companions first and foremost, most of us. And we love a cuddle and we love sharing time with them and sharing our space with them. So it can be really nice to have a Velcro dog. But when you are in a bit of a negative mental space with your dog, with dog training, with dog ownership, that sometimes that clinginess and that closeness can make things worse.
Yeah, because a little bit like this is like almost like the love bubble, isn't it? Like when you're super in love, the dog's doing everything great, you're probably more likely to be respondent than be coached up to you and one for the head. And you're like, you're my best friend, we've just had the best day. But if you haven't had the best day and you're like, I still don't know whether I've forgiven you, then being like, touch me is enough. And then the sort of love bubble bursts. And I think that's what we're talking about here is that who like it's almost like a mental health challenge for us as humans, as owners, of actually I need to separate a little bit of the training from the dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said earlier, it can be really hard not to take things personally. So when we look at our training, we usually attach it to the dog because it's us and the dog that are doing the training. We're trying to teach them a behaviour. But that dog's personality and who that dog isn't the same as their ability and their desire to train and what they're doing in training. So yeah, sometimes it is literally, please get off me because I'm struggling to contain myself here, because you almost can't bear the sight of them, the touch of them. It's like ants crawling on your skin. You just want to get rid of them. And I think that's why it is really important to make sure you're facilitating that physical space and making sure you're in the right mindset when you're training, but also just when you're spending time around your dogs. Sometimes we just need a break from them.
Yeah, because sometimes we're talking here quite a lot about like when the dog is or misbehaved or our training session's gone wrong. But we can also be very much easily in a mental health space caused by other people, work, life, career, money, like you said, where we are so frustrated with the world and under such a high amount of stress that if the dog then suddenly is all clingy, all over you, all this, they sadly, and we all do it and we never mean to do it, they get the brunt of that then. But also from that comes, I do think, without doubt, a sense of guilt. On the one where they've caused it, shall we say, even though they haven't caused it, they misbehaved in training. We need a little bit of time and space to chill our own minds about our own frustrations and then get back to where we were. These can be times when it wasn't their fault and then we've got frustrated and then we feel so much guilt, don't we? And that's another human emotion where the dog's not even aware that they've upset us.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you just mentioned, life in general can be quite relentless, can't it? We have things being thrown at us from all angles all of the time, and that is just the society that we live in. But when we have a dog, they're also pretty relentless. If we look at dog ownership and what is required of that, even at a very basic level, it's pretty relentless. It's taking them out, letting them out, feeding them, grooming them, all of these things all of the time. It's daily, it's multiple times in a day. And you can't get away from that fact no matter what you're doing with them, even if you're not taking your training to an extra level. So it can be really hard to have that space from them if you feel that you need it. And like you were saying, sometimes we're just so overwhelmed with external factors that are going on. It's not even to do with our dog, but it can make us dislike our dog.
Talking about like the certain things and different ways they behave, like certain things can also irk you that are like, we talked about habits, but they're like little things. For example, this is such a stupid thing because Rex is one of the best dogs I've ever had. But Rex cannot crap in one's point. Can't do it without talking about poo. Sorry if you're all eating or whatever you're doing as you're listening to this. But I'm like, why is it that I can do a nice neat mound and I can just pick it all up? And with you, I have to walk round and round in circles trying to pick up what is a large expanse of crap over a thing. And little things like that. Oh, okay, we're laughing and joking about it now. But if somebody's having a really bad day, things like that can be like, that's it. The dog is going. It would never be that for me with him because at the end of the day, he poos when he poos and I clean it up. But it can be the straw that breaks the camel's back when you were like, I've had enough. I can't cope with life, and then I can't cope with this. We snap, don't we?
Yeah, we all have those tipping points, don't we? And it could be anything, like you say. It might be the poo going around in the garden, or it might be something completely different. It might be our dogs, it might be something completely separate, but our dogs get the brunt of it, like you said before. It's really hard, isn't it? We can't always predict when that's going to happen. We can't predict when the end of our tether is and when that straw that breaks the camel back is. So I think it's important that we are trying to stop it before we get to that point, if we're able to, and taking a step back before we get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was training as a success coach, I did, as part of it, I was trained in, it's called Myers-Briggs personality indicators. And whilst I was doing it, you're given like numbers for who you are, etc. 8 different personality types in the world, roughly. And part of that, they were discussing when you flip out. And I was like, that's such a weird thing, isn't it? People say, oh my God, I just flipped out on the dog, or I just flipped out on my husband, or whatever. And I was really shocked, because basically mean when we flip, we change from our personality type to the opposite of our personality type. So if you're normally like laughy and jokey, you'll suddenly go very silent. Or if you normally need facts and figures, you'll suddenly not need those, you'll go off intuition. I'm explaining it very loosely here. But I think, like you just said, about knowing when you're hitting that flip point is when you start seeing your behavior not be the normal behavior. If you're normally like pretty chilled out with something, but you can feel yourself getting a little bit more riled than you would, or if you're normally quite organized in your thinking, but now you're suddenly not, those are the points where you think, hold on, this might not be the right time to continue training or to train at all. It's looking at our own behavior to understand when we need to step back, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things at play that we need to consider, and it's up to us as the owner, as the human, to not inflict things on our dogs as much as we can when we're in that negative space. And sometimes it happens before you've even noticed, doesn't it? Sometimes there will be times that you do just flip out and you can't stop it, and that happens. But we need to be able to take that step back either before or when it happens and go, okay, I'm just going to take a break. And whether that's a break from that session, whether it's a break that day, whether you have a week off from doing anything significant with your dog, anything more than you just a normal walk round, a simple walk, simple training, whatever that looks like for you, and whatever that looks like for you and your dog together, being able to change that for you and making that conscious decision to not just keep going regardless.
So if owners are starting to resent their dog's behavior on a regular basis, like we've been talking about, like individual points, we'll be like, oh my God, this dog, when it's turning into a regular situation, do we have any sort of practical advice rekindling that affection? What can they do between the owner and the dog to maybe stop this becoming a real long-term problem?
So I think if you are able to do so in your situation, that actually having that complete physical break away from your dog can really help. So whether that is just sending them to a friend or a relative for the day, overnight, for the weekend, something like that. If you've got that ability to do that, that can really help, because usually we only do that if we're going on holiday, if we're going away, which is very nice. But you're not in your normal life and dealing with your normal things that are going on. So it's helpful to have that break from your dog where you're still in your normal life, if you're able to do that, because it helps you reset as a person in your normal situation without the extra responsibilities of having and looking after your dog. So if you're able to do that, I think that can be really helpful. Some people that's not going to be possible, and that's fine. But how can you take a break when your dog is there? So how can you structure your day or your weekend or however long you are allot for this time, this break? How can you do it with your dog being there? So that might be that you don't do any serious training, you don't do any big training sessions, you don't do any really long walks, you don't go to any places that you know that you struggle with your dog's behavior, so you keep it nice and simple, those kinds of things. Taking it right back to the bare bone, in that rest, in your own mindset, and then moving on from there. So for some people, they might like to write a plan. Some people like to physically take a note and how am I going to move forward from this? Some people, it might be more casual. I like spending time with my dogs where we're not doing anything, where there's no pressure. I'll go somewhere, I'll sit on a bench if it's not raining for once, or you might just sit on the sofa, at home, whatever it is, but sitting with your dog. You're not doing anything. You're not even really interacting with each other, but you're spending time in each other's presence with no pressure, with no responsibilities. That can be really nice and really refreshing, particularly if you are able to get out and go somewhere where it is nice to be and nice to sit and nice to spend time outside getting that fresh air. That can be really beneficial. I do that a lot with my dogs when I feel that I'm struggling to cope, because I have 4 with they all have different needs, they're all at different stages. That in itself can be quite overwhelming. So taking that separate time. In fact, I actually did it this morning on our morning walk. I just stopped and sat down on a log, actually, not even a proper bench, but sat there with all of them and just took 10 minutes where I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't asking the dogs to do anything. So if they sat, if they laid down, if they were standing, that's fine. I wasn't bothered in that moment, and just spent time with them, gave them a little nice calm stroke, and that was it. So it's just building that bond in a really casual setting where there's no expectations on you to do anything, and there's no expectations on your dogs to perform or behave in a certain way.
Yeah, because as a mum of 3, when they used to go off to school, I used to be like, oh my God, they've gone to school. And it was only like, what, 6-hour break? But it was a 6-hour break. And now Meg is homeschooled. We don't have that break from each other. So we really have to be conscious of how much time we've spent in each other's spaces, for her as much as me. Because you just really, like you said, you're on top of each other. You're trying to live in the same space all the time. Now, obviously, I can't crate train Meg, but she has a bedroom and she pops off to there. When I've had enough of mum and dad, she'll say, I'm going to my room, I'm going to go and do something else. She'll give herself that space. And I think with our dogs, we can make their crate such a wonderful place to be for them, not a punishment, but a space where we can say, actually, you're going in your crate for an hour, you're going to chill out, you're going to sleep, or you're going to do this, or wherever they're doing it. With mine, if it's in the middle of the day, sometimes, certainly the older dogs, they'll either sleep or I'll put a toy in with them and they'll chew on the toy or whatever they do. But they have that little bit of their room. They don't have bedrooms here, of course, but they have that space where they're like, actually, I'm in here. I don't need to bother mum because I can't, but I can now actually rest myself. So that enforced rest actually helps with their control of themselves needing to be like in my face a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And especially if you're using some form of routine where, if you are using your crate, you know that you've got them in there for X amount of time, whether it is just half an hour, whether it's 4 hours, whatever it is for you, that you've got that separate time. So you have them away, even if it's just in a separate room from you, if you're not using a crate, where you can go and you can have time away and not thinking about your dog and what you're doing with your dog in that space, to help give yourself a mental reset as well.
I've got to be honest, when I hear the arguments, and certainly from other countries, because I think it's Sweden, I was talking to a member from Sweden, they're not allowed a door on a crate. It's against the law. I'm sure it's Sweden. I apologize, Sweden, if it's not, but it is a country I was talking to the other day. And I was just like, that's mad, because otherwise, without a crate, for example, you're asking the dog to self-control 24 hours a day, which they are an animal at the end of the day. And I genuinely believe mine will put themselves in the crate with the door open just to chill. I don't think our feelings sometimes towards a crate are warranted. I think I know for a fact, I see my crate, I see the outside kennel as beneficial to the dog's health and to mine.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've got 2 crates that there'll be at least 2 dogs in at the moment. The doors are open, they're free to come and go as they please. They all swap and go in and out of them. There's other beds available to them, but they all like to squash into a crate as well. But it is their space that they enjoy, but it is helpful to have that ability to shut the door. So even though they might like going in there, which is lovely, you can physically just take them away from your space, especially if you're going to be moving around the house a lot and you know that you've got dogs that like to get under your feet, like to come and follow you from room to room. That can feel a little bit relentless as well. So having the ability to shut them away just so you can move around your house unimpeded by a dog at your feet, that can help give you that feeling of physical space away from them as well.
Yeah, because we do have to deal with like daily chores, etc. Going up and downstairs with washing baskets or whatever we're doing. Sometimes the dog's done nothing wrong other than just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you're like, oh my God, if I trip over you again. Or with little ones, with Meg's pup, he's still a pup. He's not one yet. Yesterday I turned around, he decided a toilet roll would be the best thing to shred all over the mat. He looked delighted with himself. He thought it was absolutely fabulous. And I thought, I turned round for 2 minutes. I didn't leave you for 4 hours. You don't live here all day on your own or anything like that. I just turned my back. And I remember feeling like that with the kids. I just turned my back. So sometimes I think one of the easiest ways for us to get to a point where we love our dogs and like our dogs at the same time is to have these boundaries we're on about.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly a really good example of the straw that breaks the camel's back, isn't it? That kind of situation where you turn around and your dog has ripped up the loo roll, you just have your tipping point moment where you could really easily, if you're having that kind of day, go into that kind of meltdown mode. And then often we act in a way that, like we said before, brings us that guilt, brings us that shame. Maybe we shout at the dog, maybe we stomp around the house, whatever it is, and that later we think, actually, the dog didn't deserve that. I've not helped the situation. I could have had them in a crate or something like that. There's so many things, isn't there? And we think we then feel even worse because of our reaction to a situation. But yeah, and using a crate could have helped that, for example.
How do you think we're talking and laughing and joking? We're very open and we're very honest. It would be very easy for us to say, oh, our dogs are perfect. They never do anything wrong and we never get upset by anything. We're always perfect. That's total lies. And when you see that behaviour on Instagram, that's total lies too, because we humans, we have our, I suppose, our urges and our behaviours. They're not always 100% of the time perfectly fine. It would be great if we all were that way. So how do you think, like, talking about it and like talking in a group and not laughing at it, but I always think that when I've paid or vented my frustrations and we've laughed and joked or whatever, it eases them for me. It takes pretty much them all away then. How do you think talking about them can help people?
I know from my own personal experience, this past 6 months has been tough just because of the weather that we've been having. I've got 4 dogs and I also train other people's dogs for a living. Sometimes I come home from a day's training other people's dogs and I don't want to look at my own dogs. I don't want to look at them because I'm all dogged out. I cannot even look at you because I've had it all day in my face. And I've found this past 6 months that speaking with people in my community about those struggles, so other trainers that know exactly what I'm talking about, other dog owners, when we're talking about the relentless rain and the relentless mud, and having that shared experience has helped get me through it. Because like you say, we can just have a bit of a laugh and a joke and we can just go, actually, yeah, this sucks, this is rubbish, and I'm not having that much of a good time with it right now. This is really hard. It's really challenging in so many different ways. And having that shared experience can really help us through that. And we know we've seen that time and time again in the LWDG, how that shared experience helps people. You just don't feel alone.
I think the one thing we have in our group, and I know it's not all groups, and I feel sad for groups that haven't got it, is where we don't see anything as being like a stupid question, or if somebody shares something and they share it from their heart and they are hurting and you can see they are hurting and you can see they are struggling, we don't knock them down for it. We don't find that as being the point to tell them what, oh, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. I think we all approach it with a group of me too. I understand. As a group, we tend to empathize and support rather than try to judge. We don't judge, do we?
No, there's no shame in how you're feeling. It doesn't matter whether your feelings are good, bad, negative, positive, anywhere in between. Someone's felt it before. Someone's probably feeling it at the same time. And I think we often do put ourselves in that isolated space of I must be a really horrible dog owner because I don't like my dog right now. Whether it's in that moment, whether it's over a more extended period of time, I don't like my dog. And that can feel really hard to admit. It's quite taboo. And I think in some spaces, you maybe would be penalised. People would go, how can you say you don't like your dog? But as an honest and open community, we know that we've been there. We can admit that we've been there, and then we can support others who are currently feeling that way.
You're right. We've all felt it, and we all feel it like at different times. Like I think people sometimes when they're going through adolescence with a dog, oh my God, the pain they're in because the dog just lost all sense of wanting to do what somebody else wants to do sometimes. And even sadder times when they're getting towards like the end of their lives and their dog is facing things like dementia, and that's a massive struggle. So I think for people, they shouldn't feel guilt at loving their dog but not liking their dog, because we are all human.
Yeah, absolutely.
To wrap this up, not to fill it on a sad note, but what if you get to a point you think when you've tried everything, we're 4 years down the line, you've gone from not just not liking your dog to you can't stand your dog. There is no shame in saying we have not connected and ending that relationship, is there?
No, absolutely not. I think for some people, rehoming isn't an option. They would never consider it, and that's okay. But for a lot of us, most of us, if we were in that situation where we just couldn't get on with this dog, that rehoming is an option. It is there for a reason. We have rescues for a reason. And there isn't any shame in it being for that reason, that you just cannot get on with that dog. If we look at human to human relationships, we all know that there's some people that we just don't get on with, whether that's in a romantic way, in a friendship way, whether it's family. There's always people that we clash with and that we would choose to avoid if we were able to. And sometimes you just might have that in your dog. You just might have opposite personalities that you just cannot come to an agreement on. And there isn't any shame in looking for alternative options, because that same dog might go and find someone that its personality does match with, that it's much better suited with, and you're both then better off.
People change their horses. I've said it multiple times. They change their horses regularly as they grow, because the horse you need when you're 6 is not the horse you need when you're 16, because you're living a different body yourself. But also, I almost think a little bit, and I don't know if you feel it as well, say, there's people that say they're getting divorced and you go, that's sad, and you do mean it, it's really sad, but you accept that they've come to that decision, that it's just not working out for them. And then you have people who say they're getting rid of their dog, and people act as if it's the worst thing in the world they could have possibly done. And I'm thinking, but isn't it the same thing? You're just not getting on anymore.
Yeah, and I think we have that in professional dog trainers. So a lot of gun dog trainers, handlers at those high levels will have, massive teams. They have kennels of 10 dogs plus 20 dogs. And in that, you're going to have dogs that you get on with better and dogs that you don't get on with as much. And so we do see that some of the professionals will keep multiple puppies out of a litter, will raise them to 6 months, 8 months, that kind of thing, and then move on the ones that they just don't gel with, that just don't align with what they want to do, maybe. And they do that regularly, and they've got no shame in that, because there isn't any shame in that, because they're doing it from a business perspective. It has to be right for them. I think it is different when we're looking at an average owner who has one dog, maybe. It does become a harder situation, because it's not from a business standpoint. We feel that we owe our dogs more when it's just one-on-one. It's a more intense relationship, isn't it? So I think reaching that decision can be really challenging, but sometimes it's just the way the cookie crumbles. We just do not align.
There is a podcast on this. I'll put it in the show notes, but it was done by Samantha Thornycroft Taylor. If you look back through the episodes, you'll find one about whether to rehome or not to rehome. It's absolutely there for you. There's also many podcasts on the topics we've covered. Also in my book, The Thoughtful Dog Trainer, there's a whole section on what I've covered today about Myers-Briggs, about what that can mean for you as a handler. So that's definitely worth having a little look at. Thank you, Sarah. It's been another brilliant podcast. Is there any sort of points you want to cover just to wrap up this amazing podcast?
No, thank you for having me, Jo. It's been great. No, I think it just as a final closing statement is that there's, like we've covered, that all of us at some point dislike our dogs. Sometimes we just don't get on with them. There is no shame in that. There are ways to come back from that. It's usually not too far gone that you can't fix it. But if you are at that situation, that there's also other options for you.
Give yourself space, go get a bar of chocolate.
That's great advice, isn't it?
Start again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bless. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Sarah for being our expert for this episode. We hope you've all enjoyed. Please let us know. Please send us some emails. Letting us know if you've enjoyed it and what other topics you want us to cover. Also, please share, and please, if you can, if you are on one of the major podcast platforms, please review. You cannot imagine how much reviewing does help other people find this. The more you review us, the more that the podcast players show our stuff to other people who may be interested. So your reviews make a massive difference to whether somebody will find us and whether we will be able to help them and their dog. Thank you all for listening, and we hope to speak to you all next week. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.